All right, so I've got a question about one of your products, your human centipede Santa sweater.
Dying to hear what this is.
My question is why? Just why?
Why not? One of the greatest films of all time.
Welcome to Marketing with Friends. I'm Jen Capstraw, and in our inaugural episode, we're talking about humor and marketing. And we've got a terrific guest, the ever memorable Jens of Shinesty. Please introduce yourself because I can't figure out how to pronounce your last name.
Nicolaysen. Yeah. Shockingly, it's phonetical, but it's an intimidated looking name for sure. I'm the co-founder and CMO at Shinesty. We are a brand of outrageous apparel for all of life's social moments, whether those are the big ones that everyone thinks about, Christmas, Thanksgiving, 4th of July, or the little ones that happen all the time that are a little more lifestyle, like date night.
All right, so you should know that I am a huge fan of Shinesty, although I am not your target demographic. I am a very boring, middle aged woman, but I love fun and I hate rules. And Shinesty is both of those things. Could you describe the Shinesty brand voice and what kind of results that has produced for you? And be honest.
So our whole marketing and brand philosophy centers around entertaining first and selling second. And I don't think where we would be today having millions of customers if we hadn't employed that approach. It was especially important in the early days because, like, for everyone who's not familiar with the brand, we used to sell things that were very geared towards theme parties and events. And we curated all those products online, whether that was for an 80s party or a Christmas party or the 4th of July or Halloween, Mardi Gras, tailgating, those types of things. And the nature of those products was just that you didn't need them all that often, and it was kind of unpredictable when you needed them. So we needed a marketing philosophy that would allow us to keep up with people and keep them engaged with our content, keep them opening our emails, watching our ads, engaging with our social, even if they didn't need those products at the time. So if that's kind of the customer standpoint for it, selfishly, we also just thought it would be a lot more fun to work on a brand that was centered around comedy. It'd be a lot more fun to create content for. Very few businesses use humor and entertainment as their kind of core philosophy, as their as a core marketing tactic. And so we thought that a brand that did that would tend to stand out 10, 20, 30 times more than all the other brands who were playing largely similar versions of voice and tone and marketing message.
Humor's definitely an incredible way to build that emotional connection with your audience. And as you said, brands are shying away from this. And the reason seems to be that they feel that there's some kind of risk involved. Do you think that there's risk involved with humor?
Yes, I do think there's inherent risk in using comedy as a brand because I think a lot of people want to do it, but they don't feel authentically driven to do it. And if the use of comedy and the use of entertainment isn't authentic to your brand, it's just going to come off as potentially cringeworthy. It's not going to be the look you want. So if you're going to do that, it needs to work with your brand. It needs to work with your product, and you need to have a team in place that can produce it in a way that's repeatable and on brand. And if you can, though, I think it's really, really powerful.
When it comes to Shinesty's humor, is there anything that's off limits?
Definitely. So over time, we try to be a polarizing brand. We try to walk lines, and we actually kind of consider it a badge of success for a piece of content or a campaign if we piss some people off, because we kind of feel like if you're not making somebody a little upset with your content, then you're not really appealing to anyone on the flip side. And so there are a couple areas where we've kind of tested and listened to the feedback from our core customers and been okay, maybe that's not a place that our type of comedy plays well. In other places, it's just instinct. It's come on, we're not gonna mess with race, and we're not going to mess with religion.
I actually saw a brand this morning cross that line and make a very tragic mistake with humor. It was a productivity app, and the joke was about ADHD. And there was probably an opportunity there to be ADHD, am I right? And create some unity within that community. But instead, it was laughing at ADHD and questioning whether, in fact, it was even real. And it It struck me hard. I had to like do a little rage tweet. Actually, turned into something good. I heard back from the CEO of the company, and we're going to have a conversation about how he could potentially build community and speak to that audience. So something good came out of it.
There have been plenty of times where we put something out and we kind of felt like, oh, this will be funny, without thinking about all of the potential interpretations of the comedy. You know, like one that comes to mind is like, you know, we were trying to use like a parody, like your mom joke. All right, it's kind of like a low level humor, but it's funny. It gets laughs, I guess. And so we with our emails, we always switch the from name. And it's like your.mom@shinesty.com or like from new.release@shinesty.com, things that look more conversational. And we put your mom out because we're like, oh, it's kind of meant to be a your mom joke. And the number of people we got, like, oh, my mom died. This like really, really messed with me. We're like, oh no, that was certainly not our intent. So you got to like, you really do have to think about like the ripple effects of some of these things. And make sure that like you really clarify like, hey, when can we, you know, employ parody versus when does it look like we're making fun of a serious situation? Because there's a very fine line between parody and making fun of like very serious situations and not looking like you understand the gravity of some of those situations. Another one we put out where we actually like, we think we're probably right in this is the very beginning of the pandemic. Like, you remember a lot of brands were saying like, hey, COVID-19, here's what we're doing about it. Like, our warehouse is safe and our blah, blah, blah. We're doing this. We're working from home. And we were kind of just like, those are all table stakes things. Like, obviously, we're going to do all those things. And nobody needs to hear a message from Shinesty about how like we're sanitizing our warehouse if we're just doing that because it's the right thing to do. So we wrote like a huge parody email about like how our IT team was like keeping the back end of the site safe and things like this, and how, you know, we were, you know, hoarding toilet paper for our employees and distributing it, and like basically just making parody of a lot of the serious stuff that was happening around the early stages of the pandemic. And like, while some people were like, I can't believe you'd make fun of this pandemic, most people were like, finally, somebody who's not like fear mongering us and making, you know, we know this is a serious situation, and this was like a real bright spot for us. So that was another case where I think we employed parody a little bit better.
I mean, Jen, do you have any final words of wisdom for marketers who are afraid to play around, dabble in humor?
The chances that you're going to make some lasting business ending decision out of a single piece of content is almost impossible. Like, you'd have to really mess up to have that be the case, or be totally out of touch with what your audience was after. So I think there's very little risk in trying it. At best, it becomes a really like memorable piece of marketing, and at worst, it's probably just a flash in the pan that people are like, nah, that was different from them. Moving on to the next thing. So I would employ people to try it. It's a lot more fun to create, and as a customer or the recipient of this content, it's a lot more fun to get, and you're and your customers are gonna be a lot more likely to engage with it.
All right, so I've got a question about one of your products. And the product that comes to mind would be your human centipede Santa sweater.
Dying to hear what this is.
My question is, why? Just why?
I think that might actually be like our best-selling sweater, as like unbelievable as it is. It's just like so far out there that, yeah. For people who might like that product, they actually just tend to love it. There's no middle ground with that product.
It is by far the most memorable product for me. And to any of you who are unfamiliar with the human centipede, I urge you to not Google it. Just don't.
Why not? One of the greatest films of all time.
We appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much, and definitely encourage our audience to sign up for the Shinesty mailing list. They break all the rules of email marketing, and I love talking about you guys at my own conference events. So Jens, thanks so much. Appreciate having you here today.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
And are there a lot of jokes about your name? I mean, I don't get a lot of jokes about my name, but your name is very similar to mine.
The Achilles heel of my name is that my family's always said Jens instead of Jens. So people are like, are you mispronouncing your Scandinavian name? And I'm like, no, that's just how I grew up. And then they give me one of these looks like,